100 Reasons Why Sex Must Wait Until Marriage Part 3. In our last discussion on 100 Reasons Why Sex Must Wait Until Marriage, we looked at the first 25 reasons why sex must wait until marriage. In this Part 3, we want to look at another 25 important reasons why sex must wait until you get married. It is my prayer that God will open your eyes to see and to understand the mind of God according to His Word. Now, let us dive deeply into this discussion. Point 26. Freedom from regret, heartbreak and anger that sex outside marriage brings. Humans are emotional beings, who possess the ability to feel love, hatred, anger, bitterness, etc. Sex between married couples was designed by the Almighty to strengthen the trust, commitment and relationship existing between them. It also develops a feeling of dependency and vulnerability. This emotional process of giving yourself away to your partner is safer within the bonds of a legal union called marriage. Abstinence between partners in courtship can help shield them from bitter emotions for one another, in the event that such courtship does not end in marriage. More than 80% of couples feel high levels of resentment towards an ex, due to the sexual relationship which existed between them. We should know that sex is one way of expressing or showing commitment to a partner within the bonds of marriage. Now, if this is abused by engaging in it outside marriage, certain negative sentiments and emotions are bound to set in. Point 27. You have complete peace of mind within yourself and with God. A Christian, even one who has been a believer for years, stands the risk of losing the inner peace that accompanies knowing God if he or she begins to engage in sex outside marriage. Premarital sex encourages other forms of terrible behavior such as indecency, lying, lack of integrity, loss of self-control, sexual addiction, pornography, masturbation, etc. It could also lead to bitterness and hardness of heart, loss of contentment, peace, and an overwhelmingly dissatisfied spiritual life. The sexual lusts which spur and also result from it would have successfully loaded the spirit man of such individuals with so many negative materials, which they find warring within their members. Christians who find themselves entangled in such a trap often find it hard to pray, read their Bibles, engage in any meaningful spiritual activity, or even tell others about Jesus. They are therefore neither at peace with themselves nor with God. Point 28. Easier to break up, if need be, if sex is not involved. The power the Almighty has deposited in sex is one that will remain a mystery to man. Sex has the power to unite two people and bind them to each other even after the deed is done and they have gone their separate ways. Premarital sex has an insatiable and progressively enslaving nature which individuals tend to underestimate. As humans, we are not only sharing bodily fluids, a much deeper and mysterious connection is made with our souls. Partners who practice abstinence will find it easier to walk away from any unfavorable relationship since there is no deep emotional attachment involved. You must learn to take a bold step of breaking off from any relationship where it is evident that you and your partner are incompatible or the Lord is not leading you to marry such a person. The willpower to walk away will still be there. Sex binds the souls of two people, fusing their emotions, feelings and desires. This makes it harder for individuals who have been engaging in premarital sex to leave such a relationship. As a result, the person gets trapped with multiple emotional injuries. Point 29. Withholding sex is the easiest way to see if your partner is only in courtship with for sex purpose. A partner may view courtship as an opportunity of experimenting sex with someone they can trust, whether intentionally or unintentionally. This shouldn't be the case. If you wait till you are married to have sex, you will know for sure that your partner loves you enough to be with you and only you. He or she will trust you in the marriage and can vouch for your faithfulness and integrity when you eventually marry. If you are in a relationship where your partner runs after you demanding sex, once he or she has it, take it that the loophole created can never be filled. Point 30, there is no going back once the mistake has been made. You can't change your past, but you can make a conscious effort to avoid the mistakes that later bring regret in life. If you wait for marriage before you have sex, birth control, abortion, single parenting, sexually transmitted diseases, guilt and regret won't be a problem. Even if you break up before marriage, though heartbroken, you will still have the gift of your virginity to bestow on a more worthy partner that you vow to spend the rest of your life with. No one practicing abstinence has ever become pregnant, contracted an STD or regretted losing their virginity to a less worthy individual, except in the case of rape. Do not be deceived, there is nothing like safe sex outside marriage, as far as Christianity is concerned. The contraceptive pills people use have their own dangerous side effects. Premarital sex also fosters lack of sexual discipline and disharmony in the home as it increases the chances of divorce later. Point 31, you may carry unwanted baggage like memories from the past. Emotional scars and unwanted mental images can defile your thoughts. You are what you think. The process of sanctification entails different stages, whereby the Almighty seeks to correct our thought process. Continuous meditation on a particular issue for a long period of time can actually build a mental stronghold which can hold us captive, if the thoughts are negative. This would not only affect our mental and psychological health by causing depression, fear, pessimism, guilt, worry, anxiety, developing destructive habits such as drinking alcohol, loss of weight, from skipping meals caused by loss of appetite. The images of passionate moments shared together would continuously replay themselves in an individual's mind, serving the sole purpose of defiling the individual. It is even possible for an individual who is married and does not properly deal with his or her thought life in the corridor of prayers to continually replay such dirty memories in his or her mind. This unfortunately is a form of adultery that can occur between couples. Point 32. It initiates a possible generational problem which would extend to your offspring. The story of Abraham is a classical example of what the consequences of sex outside marriage can do, not only to a man but his unborn generation. Abraham succumbed to the lust of the flesh when he decided to sleep with Hagar, his wife's maid, see Genesis 16. That one encounter gave birth to Ishmael, who would later become the father of the Arab nation. The Arab nation has remained one of Israel's most bitter enemies till date. Point 33, God Himself will supervise your punishment for defiling His temple. God does not take the issue of fornication lightly at all. It is not the kind of offense which He punishes with just a slap on the wrist. We are the creation of the Almighty. It is only fair to God who made us that we should pattern our lives according to His will. If we decide to go against the perfect plan of God concerning sex and its proper use, we should not be surprised at the consequences which will inevitably follow such action. If you carefully go through the Bible, you would discover that the people and nations that were involved in sexual sins got their full share of lasting punishment and even destruction. Point 34, loss of virginity and entering into blood covenant of first sexual partner. Your virginity is the most prized possession that you can give your partner on your wedding night. Once you lose it, no amount of prayers can bring it back. To lose something so precious in a careless and thoughtless manner shows a high level of irresponsibility on our parts. Careless loss of virginity not only sets us against our Maker but also against ourselves. As virgins, the first individual we have sexual intercourse with brings us into a blood covenant with such a person. Blood is very sacred to the Almighty and He does not treat issues concerning it lightly. We all have different family backgrounds, foundations and histories. This leaves us vulnerable to introduce all sorts of foreign demons, spirits, curses and covenants into our lives by that singular act. Point 35, turns God's great gift into cheap and self-centered play theater. God made the pleasure which comes from sexual intercourse to be enjoyed within the legal bounds of marriage. It is unfair to God if we enjoy such pleasure that was not created for unmarried people. At first, it may feel like enjoyment, but the end result is not palatable. Point 36. Formation of salties that may take ages to break. Sexual intercourse fuses the spirits of two individuals together. When two elements are fused, they become inseparable. Under God's design for marriage, a man and woman who have become one flesh cannot be separated without suffering great damage and pain or even destruction. When God created the union of marriage, He never intended divorce. Sex was intended for a lifelong union. If you entangle yourself with a person through sex and then decide not to continue the relationship, it can take years before you completely break free from that person. Even then, God's mercy is required for total liberation. Point 37. Sexual intimacy produces more broken relationships than strengthened ones. Sexual intercourse was designed by God to bind a couple in an exclusive relationship shared with no one else. Often, premature sexual involvement blocks the development of true intimacy because it becomes the focus of the relationship rather than friendship being central to the relationship. If weaknesses and differences have not been thoroughly explored but are discovered after sexual involvement occurs, the partners will find themselves struggling harder to work through problems. An individual may try to convince himself or herself that premarital sex is an innocent effort to ascertain sexual compatibility. God's word is clear about such. Premarital sex is fornication and thus a sin. Point 38. Most men do not marry the mother of their first child produced through premarital sex. Premarital sex is more common among people who have no idea whatsoever of the great responsibilities that accompany the birth of a child. Premarital sex does more harm than good to oneself and his or her partner. Most men who are faced with the issue of accepting responsibility for an illegitimate child may readily assume the role of a father but not a husband. These men may not feel enough love or affection to marry the mother of their child, as the relationship may not have been a serious one, or one that was never intended to end in marriage. Point 39. If you have deliverance issues, you would complicate the matter. When you are engaging in premarital sex, it cripples your self-control and poisons other virtues. Once the walls of the city are breached, its citadel can easily be captured. When you lack self-control, you open the door for Satan to come into your life and commit whatever havoc he wants. Point 40. Self-condemnation. Most people feel remorse after having sex before marriage, especially when it doesn't lead to marriage. This period is often characterized by a feeling of worthlessness and lack of any value, having given out something so precious for nothing. The person feels cheap and used. The regret and guilt of not preserving yourself will keep coming back to haunt you. Self-condemnation can also come into play when such an act involves the conception of a baby. Point 41. Unnecessary stress and anxiety. Even the most casual and transitory relationships can forge emotional bonds. How much more a relationship that involves something as deep as sex? Premarital sex brings different issues to light, such as worrying that you're pregnant, for the females, or fear of responsibility in fathering a child, for the males, fear that you may have contracted an STD, your partner could have multiple partners. Sex before a marriage has emotional consequences that can bring long-term pain, grief, and worry, which could in turn escalate into more dangerous health issues such as high or low blood pressure, mental illness, heart problems, or lead to an individual committing suicide. Point 42. The risk of conceiving illegitimate children. One of the risks associated with having children outside wedlock is the possible risk of the man refusing to take complete responsibility of the child. Children born out of wedlock have a lot of socioeconomic effects on both the parents and the society they reside in. This problem usually brings a form of social stigmatization for the child and the mother within the society. Point 43. Every relationship you break up where you have had sex creates strong and often unpleasant memories for your whole life. When people have sex in a relationship, only to later find their hopes of marriage dashed, the feelings of betrayal, grief, etc. will continue to haunt such a person for the rest of her life, except by God's mercy. Point 44. Freedom from guilty conscience and worries. Abstinence from sexual relations when a person is still single would lead to a life free from guilt and worries before God and before man. Guilt and worries resulting from premarital sex come into play when the person realizes the effects of their past sexual escapades and the consequences that may experience, most especially after marriage. Point 45. Inability to experience true love. Anyone who has had sex outside marriage may find it difficult to experience what true love is. Sex outside marriage will never have the capacity of bringing true love to a person. A person can only experience true love when they have accepted the love of God in their lives, and this comes by accepting Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior. Point 46. It can result in suspicion that destroys trust and leads to laddie or no marriage. Sex outside marriage has a lot of adverse side effects, suspicions being one of them. Most men and women that have had sex outside marriage find it hard to trust their partners in a relationship. Research has shown that couples that engaged in sex before marriage find it hard to trust each other when they are married, even if they engaged in it with each other. Point 47. It breeds hatred and strife. After having sex with their partner outside marriage, a person may eventually end up hating such partner, because sex was initiated by God to produce an unconditional love and also strengthen the union between the partners within the context of marriage. The result of this hatred by one party in the relationship would eventually lead to the collapse of the relationship. Point 48. Attacks by spirit wife or husband duetto impurity and lust. Sex outside marriage creates a legal ground for demons to enter and take possession of a person's life. Sexual immorality is one of the doors through which they invade lives. The sexually loose people, who are subject to lust and defilement, are the main toys in the hands of these wicked demons. The most terrible thing about these attacks from spirit spouses is that it can come in both physical and spiritual ways, and a person who has no knowledge of deliverance would eventually spend their whole life subjected to their control. Point 49. Avoiding unnecessary stress. Sex was designed by God to consist between two emotionally, physically and financially mature persons within the context of marriage. Those who are not married have no business engaging in it. When a person is emotionally, physically and financially mature, he or she would be able to successfully cope with all the outcome that result from it. Point 50. Easier to tell future partner about your past. Every relationship should possess a high level of transparency in it. From the inception of every relationship that is intended to lead to marriage, both partners have a duty to disclose any relevant information that may pose a threat to the peace of that relationship. With no shameful past or dark secrets to hide, it is easier for a person to tell their partners about their past. I hope this message has blessed you one way or the other. Now, let us go and explore the part 4 in the series of 100 Reasons Why Sex Must Wait Until Marriage. Thank you and God bless you.